Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Chad and Corey here, getting an update on Cosa Resources Corp, traded on the TSX-V under the ticker COSA, and on the OTCQB under the ticker COSAF. And we're joined today with the president and CEO of Cosa Resources, Keith Bodnarchuk. And Keith, it's great to get you back on the show for an update where you've got news out this morning talking about drilling kicking off at your Ursa project. Just as a reminder for people listening in, Cosa Resources has a number of different projects all peppered throughout the Athabasca Basin. You started your winter drill program at Ursa. We can't really call it a flagship yet because you have so many other targets to go after, but it's definitely warranted for follow-up because of the drill hole UR24-3 from the winter drill program, where you found some of the mineralization that looks like it could be one of these unconformity type uranium traps. So maybe just speak to the goal of this program, 4,000 meters, following up on the success you had in the winter.
Yeah, thanks, Shad. It's great to be here again. And yeah, definitely, we are excited. We have officially commenced drilling again at Ursa. This is our second program as a company and also our second program at Ursa. As you did mention, we did drill 3 holes during the winter of 2024, around March and April. And we did hit that interesting hole UR2403, where it did have that significant zone of what we call sandstone alteration and structure, potentially representing a halo that occurs around unconformity uranium deposits in the Athabasca Basin. And importantly enough, it looks like it overshot the optimal target. And so our very first hole of this program that we just started, we'll be following up UR2403. We'll be stepping back approximately about 100 meters and really testing to where we project that optimal target to be at the unconformity, where we can hopefully build off of those good results at UR2403 and hit something, even more significant with that very first hole. And so, we are excited to start with that. I think, with a junior company like ours, the drilling is the biggest catalyst and really the biggest value creator we can have. And so, it's been a bit of a wait in between seasons here, but we're excited to get going here, and we'll be drilling throughout September and into October.
Okay, so this overall program then, 4,000 meters, around 3 to 4 holes. I think a lot of our listeners know when you're drilling uranium projects, these are long holes.
Yeah.
You're going to split this up between 2 targets, though. It's not just following up on that drilling from the last program. Break down how you're going to allocate these meters then, and also share a little more details on the other target.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So we do have 2 key target areas we want to get to this drill program. The first one is Kodiak, which I discussed. That's where UR2403 in our first hole is. The second target area is the Grizzly target area. It's one we couldn't get to in the winter. There was a bit of ground truthing we wanted to do on historical drill holes that were in the area. And so we're going to be able to get to it this summer. So we're excited to head out into that area. So what's going to happen first is we'll drill out the Kodiak target area, and then we can move the drill to the Grizzly target area. I mean, depending on results, then we can allocate, the final drill hole or two to either one of those target areas to follow up results. And interestingly enough, about the Grizzly target areas, it does have the strongest sandstone uranium geochemistry on the project. It's one of those ones where the previous operators drilled a hole in the 90s. It hit significant geochemistry. They obviously identified that. They tried to follow it up in the early 2000s. It looks like the hole ended up drifting closer to that first drill hole than they wanted. But ultimately, we hit bad uranium market then, and they moved on from the project. So this area has really sat dormant for 22 years, waiting to be followed up. And it does have, like I said, the strongest uranium geochemistry on the project. These are significant results. These are geochemistry values like elevated uranium that you look for when you're targeting unconformity uranium deposit. And it has one of those similar targets to the Kodiak target area, where the optimal target has not been tested yet on the section at the unconformity. And so similar to the follow-up hole at Kodiak, this will be about a 100-meter step out. And so we're very excited about this target area too. And it's I'd say it's equally as important as the Kodiak target area. So excited to have these quality of targets, I would say, so early on at Ursa. And it's, a testament to, good work by Andy and the rest of the technical team, but also just showing that we've just scratched the surface of what Ursa has to offer. And these are, really strong exploration targets that exist so early on in our operations at that project.
Well, Keith, it may be a good spot to also remind people listening that maybe aren't thinking about uranium every day as your team is, that the game has changed as far as exploration in the Athabasca Basin for these unconformity type deposits, really kicking off, I think, in most people's minds with the Arrow discovery at NextGen, because previous to that, people were looking for it in the sandstone, but they weren't looking for those halos in the sandstone to maybe dial into the unconformity where the two mineral types meet. So maybe just speak to maybe why the old timers weren't looking for it 22 years ago and how that presents such an interesting opportunity with modern day geophysics and survey that you're flying over it.
Well, I think, you know what, there was obviously a lot of success in the past too, with groups that are able to find McArthur River, Cigar Lake, really do great work in the Athabasca Basin to find those deposits. I think, we do have an advantage now, like you said, with the geophysical technology being that much better, and also a lot of blueprints on deposits that have been recently found, whether, like you said, it's Arrow or even Phoenix with Denison or Hurricane at ISO Energy, recent success stories where you're kind of able to trace back through the public markets or through information and figure out how they ultimately arrived at that discovery. And obviously our team, does have a lot of experience working on those projects ourselves. And so, yeah, there is an advantage. And I think what happened too is when you had a lot of those, I don't know whether you call them junior companies that had that success through discoveries, it created a lot of people, a lot of geologists that had exposure to real life discovery success. And those people are able to move on to a company like Cosa and really reapply that success. Whereas in the past, it's largely the Camecos or larger companies like that that made these discoveries, and they ultimately would have ended up staying at a Cameco. So I think it is slightly different this time, where you've seen over the past 15 years, a lot of juniors actually have success with the discoveries. And it really bodes well for a company like Cosa to have been able to learn from our personal past successes and, building off successes of other companies and really being able to apply that same blueprint to what we're looking at here. So I think it has changed, I'd say, in the basin. And it's mostly been, I guess, the success and the discoveries by the junior companies over the past 15 years, which is a big difference.
And that's what COSA is going after, right? Trying to make some new discoveries. Can you give us a little bit of a lay of the land, though, in the Athabasca Basin? Because, look, that is the place to explore for uranium, especially in Canada. There are a lot of companies active, but COSA has a large and multiple projects in the area. So give us a bit of a lay of the land there, please.
Yeah, certainly. So it is home to the highest grade, largest uranium mines in the world. I think a good reference to look at is the average grade of a deposit, uranium deposit outside of the Athabasca Basin is around, give or take, about 0.2% uranium. For reference, the Hurricane deposit, which our group found when we were at ISO Energy, the average grade of that is 34.5% uranium. So this is truly some of the most valuable rock in the world. It's the highest grade uranium projects you go after, hence why you see a lot of companies really flocking to this part of the world, because it does have those highest grade, strongest geological settings as far as finding uranium deposit, but it's also a very stable jurisdiction. Saskatchewan is a place that not only allows uranium mining, they embrace it. It's part of the fabric of the community there. So I think that creates almost the perfect storm of why new companies are forming, why people are all flocking to this area. And, with ourselves, obviously Saskatchewan is an amazing place to work in. It's where I grew up, but new companies will come into that place and they will struggle to operate. Anytime you're doing exploration, it's always difficult, and we are dealing in an inflationary environment. And so I think you will see new groups who don't know contractors, who don't have those local relationships, really start to struggle to put their dollars to work. And so us, having that long track record, that long history of working in the base and having, great relationships with a lot of contractors and communities up there, it does set us apart, amongst our peers, I would say, is having that advantage as far as putting our dollars to work as efficiently as possible.
Well, Keith, let's also talk about some other data that your team will be gathering in addition to the drilling data, which I know most people are focused on the drills, but you also will still have some ambient noise tomography, the ANT seismic data coming back in from Ursa. And you're also flying, or you have been flying, some airborne surveys over Aurora and orbit. So maybe just talk about the data flow that the team will continue to gather as the year progresses.
Yeah, certainly. So we did perform ANT over, it's about a 27-kilometer stretch of the Ursa project. We will have that data back shortly, and it will be able to help guide us on this current drill program. Our first follow-up targets, it wasn't necessary to have the ANT data, but it will help guide us as we continue on with this drill program. And importantly, it could upgrade a few other target areas along the Ursa project. And so we are excited to get that back. I think you've seen some groups have some really good success at using ANT and really mapping out some of these alteration halos you look for. So we're really excited to get that data back. We also performed ANT over top of our Orion project, which is really in the same vicinity as Ursa. It's one where, we hope to get to next year. And then, as you mentioned, Chad, we did do airborne geophysics over top of Orbit and Aurora. These are shallower target areas. These are ones that are right next to Key Lake. They have not seen exploration really since the 1970s. And so it's one of those ones where, you can really do cost-effective exploration, and we can add those targets to the pipeline of drill targets for 2025, and does provide a bit of a counterbalance to exploring the deeper targets at, say, an Orion or an Ursa, where we can have a bit of these shallower targets right next to Key Lake. And I think, importantly, what you can kind of go through all of our projects, and they all kind of have these same key ingredients, overlooked, underexplored areas. And that's where people are heading to, right? People are heading to these areas where they haven't seen as much work, because that's what it's going to take to find these next tier 1 size deposits. You saw that happen with Fission and NextGen, about 15, 20 years ago, when they ended up going in the Patterson Lake area. And that was very successful for them. And so that's what we're trying to do with Ursa, even Aurora, places like that, where it's just projects that were previously overlooked, but they're ones that, we think display those same key ingredients that you look for when you find these deposits. And so that's why we're, continue to generate that pipeline of targets and really focus in on making sure we have drill ready targets to continue for years to come, really.
So Keith, wrap us up then with an overview of the budget of this 4,000 meter program and where the company stands cash wise to keep moving forward with this exploration, please.
Yeah, certainly. So we're in Q3 here. We're just sitting around just shy of $5 million Canadian. We'll deploy some of that obviously during this drill program, and we are fully funded for the remainder of 2024 exploration, and that treasury can carry us into 2025.
All right, Keith. Well, we'll wrap it up there for today, but definitely keep us posted as more news comes out. When some of the drilling comes out of Ursa, we'll definitely get you back on. When those ANT survey results come out, let's get you on to talk about that as well, just for future targeting. And people following along with this interview want to check out the news over at Cosa Resources. Definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you straight to their website, to the news section, so you too can follow along with the news as it's released to the market. And Keith, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, guys. That sounds great to me.